First contact gone fabulous. Grand Admiral Kelzar of the Draconid Empire stood on the bridge of the Eternal Dominion, his scaled hands clasped behind his back as he observed the unremarkable solar system before him. The fleet's formation was perfect. 300 ships arranged in the sacred pattern of subjugation that had heralded victory in 1,000 conquests. Primitive defenses detected, Admiral, reported First Sensor Officer Vix. Their orbital installations appear to be. Wait. She adjusted her instruments with a frown. That can't be right. Explain, Kelzar commanded, his tail twitching with irritation. Their orbital platforms are arranged in what appears to be a smiley face, sir. Before Kelzar could respond, every screen on the bridge lit up with a transmission. A human appeared, dark-skinned, with close-cropped silver hair and wearing what appeared to be a standard military uniform that had been bedazzled within an inch of its life. The rank insignia sparkled with actual diamonds. Greetings, Draconid Empire. I'm Admiral Maya Chen of the Earth Defense Force. Love what you've done with the fleet formation. Very menacing, very classic. But you might want to adjust your third quadrant about 2 degrees. The symmetry is just slightly off. Kelzar's inner eyelids flickered in confusion. You dare to critique the sacred pattern of subjugation. Oh, honey, I'm not critiquing. I'm helping. But since you brought up patterns, Admiral Chen pressed something on her command chair, which Kelzar now noticed was upholstered in what appeared to be color-shifting smart fabric. The human defense fleet emerged from behind Earth's moon, but not in any formation Kelzar had ever seen. Their ships moved in flowing, circular patterns, leaving trails of iridescent plasma that formed complex geometric designs in space. The vessels themselves seemed to ripple with chromatic waves, their hull plating shifting colors in synchronized patterns. Our analysts said your species barely had FTL capability, Kelzar said, watching as the human ships continued their bizarre dance. Oh, that. Chen laughed. That report was from before we figured out you could improve engine efficiency by 300% by adding sick beats. Watch this. One of the human ships, presumably their flagship based on the amount of decoration, executed a perfect spiral while trailing what appeared to be actual glitter in its wake. The maneuver should have torn the ship apart. Instead, it somehow improved their shield harmonics. Impossible, breathed Vix. Their shield modulation is matching the rhythm of, is that Earth music playing through our sensors? Indeed, a pulsing beat had begun emanating through every system on the Eternal Dominion. The human ships were now moving in perfect synchronization with it, each maneuver both tactically sound and unnecessarily flashy. We call this one the quantum waltz, Chen explained as her fleet split into 3 groups, executing a complex series of interwoven spirals. Turns out particle physics works way better when you let it dance. Also, we're streaming this live to about 8 billion people right now. Your aesthetic is trending on SpaceChat. Kelzar felt a headache building behind his primary eyes. This is not how space combat works. There are protocols, traditions. Traditions are just peer pressure from dead people. Chen interrupted cheerfully. We decided to jazz things up a bit. Speaking of which, she pressed another button on her command chair. The human ships suddenly blazed with light, their hull plating now incorporating what appeared to be programmable matter displays. Each vessel became a floating work of art, displaying shifting patterns that were simultaneously beautiful and, according to Kelzar's tactical display, playing havoc with his targeting systems. These are just the basic moves, Chen continued. Wait until you see what happens when we drop the bass. But first, we noticed your ships look a little drab. Have you considered adding some RGB lighting? Really makes the quantum torpedoes pop. Our ships are instruments of war, Kelzar growled, not entertainment venues. Why not both? Chen's grin widened. Here, let me show you what you're missing. The human flagship executed what Kelzar's tactical computer identified as a moonwalk, somehow sliding backwards through space while rotating on its axis. The maneuver scattered his sensors, created 3 separate quantum wake distortions, and looked absolutely fabulous. "Sir," Vix reported, her voice strained, "I'm detecting likes. The human information networks are rating our fleet's appearance. We're being called aesthetically conservative and in need of a makeover." "This is absurd," Kelzar declared. "We are the Draconid Empire. We have conquered 1,000 worlds, and they all look the same," Chen interrupted. "No flair, no style, no pizzazz. But don't worry, we can help. Our cultural exchange program includes a complimentary design consultation. Those angular hull plates, so last century. Let me introduce you to our chief designer." "Enough," Kelzar roared. "We did not come here to discuss aesthetics. Prepare main weapons. OMG, you're actually going to do it." Chen clapped her hands in delight. "Everyone's been waiting for this part. Hit it." The human fleet suddenly rearranged itself into what Kelzar's cultural database identified as a dance circle. Their flagship took the center position, its hull now blazing with patterns that seemed to exist in more dimensions than should be possible. "Sir," Vix reported, her voice barely a whisper, "their weapon signatures. They're modulating them to create something called a light show. And I think our targeting computers are trying to dance." Kelzar watched in mounting horror as his supposedly superior fleet faced off against what appeared to be a combination of military force and performance art troupe. The worst part was, he couldn't tell which aspect made them more dangerous. "Now then," Chen said, somehow having acquired a pair of holographic sunglasses, "shall we discuss terms, or would you prefer to see what happens when we turn this space battle into a proper rave?" The Grand Admiral of the Draconid Empire, conqueror of 1,000 worlds, felt his headache intensify. This was definitely not going to be a standard conquest. The art of war, but make it fashion. Grand Admiral Kelzar's War Council was not going well. On the main display, Earth's defense fleet continued its mesmerizing performance, while his senior staff argued about whether they were witnessing tactical genius or collective madness. "Their entire command structure defies logic," declared Strategic Master Ixel, jabbing a clawed finger at the holographic display. "Look at their flagship, the Party Rockin', if you can believe that name. Its hull is covered in something called dynamic chrome that changes colors." "The color changing isn't the problem," Chief Engineer Nax interrupted, all 4 of her eyes fixed on her datapad. "The problem is that each color shift corresponds to a different quantum field modulation. They're using aesthetic choices as weapon systems." As if to demonstrate her point, the Party Rockin' executed a series of moves that looked suspiciously like a dance routine from Earth's disco era. Each step somehow generated overlapping fields of quantum interference that played havoc with Draconid targeting systems. More alarming still, the interference patterns formed what humans called a groove. 3 of our junior officers were caught trying to replicate the moves in the recreation chamber, Security Chief Frax reported grimly. They claimed it was for tactical research. Kelzar's headache, which had been steadily building since first contact, intensified. "What about their command structure? Surely we can find some weakness there." The council chamber's main screen lit up, showing Admiral Chen's smiling face. She was now wearing what appeared to be a uniform made entirely of smart fabric that shifted between different camouflage patterns, none of which would actually provide camouflage in space. "Hey guys, hope I'm not interrupting your strategy session. Just wanted to show you our new tactical overlay system. We call it Vibe Check." She gestured, and suddenly the space around her fleet lit up with swirling patterns of energy. "Turns out you can map quantum probability fields using interpretive dance. Who knew?" That's not how probability fields work," Chief Scientist Zex protested weakly. "Not with that attitude it isn't," Chen replied with a wink. "Watch this." The human fleet suddenly split into smaller groups, each ship trailing streams of quantum-entangled particles that formed complex geometric patterns. According to Kelzer's tactical displays, they were simultaneously in perfect defensive formation and performing something called synchronized swimming. The worst part, Nax muttered, is that it's working. Their shield harmonics are actually improving with each dance move. They've turned space combat into a performance art, and somehow that makes them more effective. Oh, you noticed. Chen beamed. We found out that quantum particles really like to boogie. Add some sick beats and suddenly your weapon efficiency goes up by 200%. Plus, she added, adjusting her holographic sunglasses, it looks absolutely fabulous. Kelzar watched as the party Rockin executed a perfect spiral maneuver that should have torn the ship apart. Instead, it generated a cascade of quantum effects that his sensors couldn't even properly categorize. The ship's wake left a trail of what appeared to be actual sparkles in space. Those aren't just sparkles, Nax said, answering his unspoken question. They're quantum-entangled microsatellites programmed to respond to musical rhythms. They're using party decorations as a defense network. Speaking of defense networks, Chen interjected, we noticed your fleet's energy grid looks a little rigid. Have you considered adding some flow to it? Here, let me show you. The human fleet suddenly arranged itself into a new formation that Kelzer's tactical computer identified as a conga line. Each ship pulsed with chromatic energy that somehow matched the beat of the music now playing through every system on his flagship. Sir, Vrax reported, our junior officers are. They're taking notes. And I think I saw Lieutenant Kix practicing dance moves in the corridor. The humans are infecting us with their chaos, Ixel declared. We must strike now, before. Before what? Chen asked. Before you realize that space combat doesn't have to be all doom and gloom. Before you discover that quantum mechanics works better when you let it express itself. Before you admit that your ships would look amazing with some LED underlighting. As if to emphasize her point, the party Rockin executed a maneuver that Kelzer's computer simply labeled. The ship seemed to slide sideways through space-time, while spinning on its axis, leaving a trail of quantum distortions that formed a perfect spiral pattern. More disturbingly, it looked effortless. That's not possible, Zex whispered. They're breaking at least 3 laws of physics. Oh, honey, Chen laughed. We're not breaking physics. We're inviting it to dance. The universe has rhythm. You just have to learn to feel it. Speaking of which, she pressed a button on her command chair, which Kelzer noticed was now hovering slightly above the deck, supported by what appeared to be a localized anti-gravity field synchronized to the beat. The space around Earth's fleet suddenly lit up with holographic displays, showing real-time combat statistics presented as if they were music visualization effects. Each ship's power levels pulsed in time with the music, their shield harmonics creating overlapping patterns that were both tactically sound and visually stunning. We're streaming this to the whole galaxy, by the way, Chen added. Your formation is getting mixed reviews, but don't worry. Our design team has some great ideas for spicing it up. Have you considered adding some chrome accents? Maybe some running lights? Kelzer looked at his war council, seeing his own bewilderment reflected in their expressions. The humans had taken every principle of space combat and turned it into entertainment, and somehow that made them more formidable, not less. Sir, Nax said quietly, I've been analyzing their technology. Everything they've added. The lights, the music, the dynamic hull plating. It all serves multiple purposes. The aesthetics aren't just for show. They've weaponized style itself. As if to prove her point, the party Rockin unleashed a barrage of quantum torpedoes that left rainbow trails in their wake. Each torpedo's trajectory was unpredictable, guided by what Chen called the rhythm of the groove. Kelzar's targeting computers gave up trying to track them and started playing Earth music instead. So, Chen said, her uniform now cycling through every color in the visible spectrum, and several that weren't. Shall we discuss those terms, or would you prefer to see what happens when we really start dancing? The Grand Admiral of the Draconid Empire looked at his war council, then back at the human fleet that had turned warfare into a disco. He had a feeling this was going to require a completely new chapter in the military manual, one with a surprisingly heavy focus on choreography, cultural confusion, and combat choreography. The Draconid Empire's top military academy was in chaos. Professor Cax, head of tactical studies, stared in disbelief at his students' latest simulation attempts. On every screen in the training hall, cadet ships were attempting to recreate human battle maneuvers with varying degrees of success, mostly catastrophic. No, 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 he roared as another formation spiraled out of control. The electric slide is not an acceptable evasion pattern. But sir, protested Cadet Vera, her scales flushed with embarrassment, the humans achieve a 47% increase in shield efficiency when they doge. Cax's tail lashed in frustration. Turn combat into a dance party. Add underglow lighting to their quantum torpedoes. Install subwoofers in their hull plating. Actually, interrupted Admiral Chen's voice as every screen in the facility suddenly switched to her transmission. The subwoofers are part of our structural integrity field. The bass really ties the whole ship together. Cax's inner eyelids flickered rapidly. How did you hack into our military academy's secure network? Oh, we didn't hack anything, Chen replied cheerfully. Her uniform today appeared to be made of living crystal that pulsed in time with her words. Your firewall just really liked our playlist and let us in. Speaking of which, your network security could use some rhythm. Before Cax could respond, the Academy's entire computer system began pulsing with chromatic waves. Each security protocol was transformed into a musical note, creating what Chen called a security symphony. See, much better. Now your system can detect intrusions by noting when something's offbeat. Plus, it looks fantastic. In orbit above the Academy, the Party Rockin' led Earth's fleet through a series of maneuvers that defied both physics and conventional military doctrine. Each ship's hull rippled with quantum chromatic waves, their formation somehow maintaining perfect tactical positioning, while looking like an elaborate space ballet. Your students have great potential, Chen noted, watching the chaos in the simulation chamber. That last formation almost had the right groove. They just need to feel the rhythm of space-time. Space-time doesn't have rhythm, Cax protested. It's a fundamental fabric of reality, not a dance floor. Everything has rhythm, Professor, Chen corrected, as her fleet demonstrated a new formation that involved quantum tunneling in time with what humans call funk. The universe is basically one big cosmic dance party. You just need to learn the steps. The Academy's sensors struggled to track the human ships as they moved in patterns that seemed to ignore conventional physics. Each maneuver was simultaneously a tactical repositioning and a choreographed performance, their weapon systems integrated into the overall rhythm of their movement. Sir, reported Cadet Vera, studying her readings with growing excitement, their new formation is generating quantum harmonics that actually improve their weapons' efficiency. The aesthetic elements aren't just for show, they're fundamental to their technology. Cax watched in mounting horror as his students began taking notes, several of them moving unconsciously in time with the human fleet's rhythm. The worst part was, he could see the tactical advantages. Every seemingly frivolous addition to their ship served multiple purposes. The chrome plating contains quantum reactive materials, Vera continued, her analysis picking up speed. The LED arrays are part of a visual communication system that works even through heavy ECM. Even the music itself is being used to coordinate their movements with unprecedented precision. But it's not proper military doctrine, Cax insisted, even as his tactical computer attempted to add a beat to his analysis protocols. Who decides what's proper? Chen asked, her holographic sunglasses somehow twinkling with amusement. We looked at traditional space combat and thought, this needs more pizzazz. Turns out, pizzazz is incredibly effective. As if to demonstrate, the Party Rockin' executed a maneuver that Cax's computer simply labeled absolutely fabulous. The ship spun through a series of quantum states, each transition marked by a pulse of chromatic energy that interfered with Draconid sensors while looking spectacular. The really fun part, Chen added, is that we're still figuring out new moves. Watch this. The human fleet suddenly rearranged itself into what appeared to be a three-dimensional music visualization, each ship's position corresponding to a note in an elaborate symphony of quantum effects. The resulting interference patterns created both an impenetrable defense screen and an impressive light show. We call this one the quantum quadrille, Chen explained as her ships danced through space-time. It combines fourth-dimensional topology with classic ballroom patterns. Plus, it looks amazing on social media. Cax turned to see several of his students already posting analysis of the maneuver on what humans called SpaceNet. The tactical implications were being discussed alongside debates about choreography and lighting design. Your entire approach to warfare is, Cax struggled to find the words. Innovative, fabulous, genre-defying. Chen suggested, we prefer to think of it as technically extra. Speaking of which, your academy's architecture has some real potential. Have you considered adding some dynamic lighting? Maybe some zero-gravity dance floors? Before Cax could object, the academy's environmental systems began pulsing with gentle chromatic waves. The lighting adjusted itself to create what Chen called optimal learning ambience, and the artificial gravity subtly shifted to encourage more fluid movement patterns. There, much better learning environment. Studies show that information retention improves by 60% when you add the right aesthetic elements. Plus, she added with a wink, it helps prepare your students for the future of space combat. Speaking of which, the party rockin' executed another impossible maneuver, its wake leaving a trail of quantum distortions that formed complex fractal patterns in space. Each pattern contained encrypted tactical data, transmitted through what Chen called the universal language of dance. Sir, Vera reported, her voice filled with barely contained excitement. I think I'm starting to understand their approach. It's not just about adding unnecessary flourishes. They found ways to make the flourishes necessary. Cax watched as his students began incorporating human principles into their simulations. The results were chaos, but it was increasingly organized chaos. More worryingly, it was effective chaos. Face it, Professor, Chen said kindly. The future of space combat is fabulous. You can either learn to dance with it, or get left behind wondering why your targeting computers are trying to start a conga line. In the simulation chamber, Cadet Vera's team successfully executed a simplified version of a human evasion pattern. The maneuver looked ridiculous, violated several laws of physics, and improved their shield efficiency by 40%. Cax felt his headache intensify. He was going to need to completely rewrite the curriculum, and possibly install a dance floor. The revolution will be live-streamed. The Draconid Empire's Cultural Preservation Committee was having the worst day in its 1,000-year history. High Curator Zix stared at the reports flooding his terminal with mounting despair. It's spreading, he whispered, watching as another Draconid colony world reported what humans called a viral trend. They're adding RGB lighting to their ceremonial armor. His assistant, Junior Curator Nix, nodded grimly. That's not the worst of it, sir. The Military Academy graduates have started a social media movement. They're calling it #ScaleSandSparkles. The main display showed footage from across the Empire. Young Draconids were modifying their traditional attire with chromatic materials, their scaled skin gleaming with biodegradable glitter. Even worse, they were dancing. Not the dignified movements of ancient ritual, but something that looked suspiciously like what humans called breaking. How did this happen? Zix demanded, his tail twitching anxiously. We're the Draconid Empire. We have traditions. About those traditions, Admiral Chen's voice cut in as she appeared on every screen in the facility. Today her uniform seemed to be made of living starlight, constellations shifting across the fabric. Have you considered that they might be more fun with a beat? Zix's inner eyelids flickered rapidly. This is your fault. You've infected our youth with your style, creativity, joie de vivre. Chen suggested helpfully. All we did was show them that you can be both powerful and fabulous. Speaking of which, your cultural archives have amazing potential. Want to see? Before anyone could object, the archive's holographic displays transformed. Historical records began pulsing with chromatic energy, each data stream synchronized to what Chen called lo-fi beats to preserve culture too. There, much better presentation. Now your history actually looks historic. But this is sacred data. Zix protested, even as he noticed several junior curators bobbing their heads to the rhythm. And now it's sacred data with production value, Chen corrected. Look, your civilization has achieved amazing things. Why not show them off with appropriate flair? On the displays, footage from the Empire's greatest victories was being remixed with what humans called epic background music. Zix was horrified to realize it actually made the battles look more impressive. Sir, Nix reported, checking the archive's analytics, engagement with historical records has increased 300% since the new presentation format was implemented. The youth are actually voluntarily studying Empire history. Of course they are, Chen said. Everything's better with a soundtrack. Watch this. The party rocket appeared in orbit, its hull now decorated with animated scenes from Draconid history, rendered in quantum chromatic light. Each image was both beautiful and tactically significant, the patterns interfering with enemy targeting while preserving cultural heritage. We call it edutainment, Chen explained as her ship turned ancient battle formations into choreographed light shows. Learning should be fun. Also, your traditional war dances. Amazing potential for combat maneuvers. We incorporated some into our latest tactical update. As if to demonstrate, the human fleet executed a series of movements that Zix recognized with shock as modified versions of ancient Draconid ritual dances. Somehow, they'd turned sacred ceremonies into both valid combat techniques and impressive performances. This is cultural appropriation, Zix declared, though he couldn't help noticing how effectively the movements translated to space combat. More like cultural appreciation, Chen corrected. We're not replacing your traditions, we're helping them evolve. Your youth already understands this. Check your trending topics. Zix looked at his cultural monitoring feeds and felt his scales pale. The Empire's young people were creating fusion art, combining traditional Draconid motifs with human aesthetic sensibilities. The results were both horrifying, and he had to admit, rather striking. Sir, Nix reported, trying to hide her excitement, the new cultural synthesis is generating unprecedented levels of creative expression. And, she hesitated, the military reports that incorporating traditional dance movements into combat training has improved performance by 200%. But we're losing our identity. Zix protested. Are you? Chen asked kindly. Or are you discovering new ways to express it? Your traditions are beautiful. We just thought they deserved some spotlight. Literally, in some cases, she gestured, and spots of quantum chromatic light began highlighting the archive's most impressive artifacts. The effect was undeniably striking. Each piece of history seemed to come alive under the new presentation, ancient stories told through light and motion. The worst part was, public engagement with cultural heritage was at an all-time high. The young ones are calling it Tradition 2.0, Nix reported, showing him the latest social media trends. They're not abandoning our heritage, they're reinterpreting it for a new era, and, she added with barely concealed enthusiasm, some of their innovations are genuinely impressive. Zix watched as a group of young Draconids performed a traditional ceremony, while their modified armor created holographic displays of historical events. The effect was both respectful to tradition and undeniably engaging. Your culture is amazing, Chen said softly. We just wanted to help it shine. Sometimes, literally. Besides, she added with a grin, you have to admit your sacred texts look better with dynamic typography. The archive's main display showed an ancient manuscript now enhanced with subtle animations that made the text seem to flow like liquid starlight. Engagement metrics showed that actual readership of the texts had increased tenfold. "The revolution will be live-streamed," Nix murmured, watching as another cultural fusion video went viral across the empire. "And apparently, it will have an excellent soundtrack." Zix looked at his beloved archives, now pulsing with new life as younger generations engaged with their heritage in ways he'd never imagined. The worst part wasn't that it was changing. It was that the changes were working. "Think of it this way," Chen suggested, her uniform now displaying a respectful tribute to classical Draconid art. "Your culture isn't being replaced. It's getting a glow-up. Speaking of which, have you considered adding some ambient lighting to the archive hall? Really make those artifacts pop." The High Curator of the Draconid Empire watched as his carefully preserved traditions merged with human aesthetics to create something new and vital. He had a feeling the next chapter of their cultural history was going to need a much more dynamic presentation format. And possibly some RGB lighting. Peace through pizzazz. The Grand Council chamber of the Draconid Empire had never looked like this. The ancient hall, traditionally lit by solemn plasma torches, now pulsed with quantum chromatic waves. Historic battle standards hung alongside holographic displays, showing real-time cultural fusion trends. And in the center of it all, Grand Admiral Kelzer found himself facing the most unusual peace negotiation in Imperial history. "Love what you've done with the place," Admiral Chen said, her uniform today seemingly made of living aurora borealis. "The traditional architecture really pops with the right lighting." Kelzar, whose own ceremonial armor had somehow acquired subtle RGB accents, he blamed his younger staff, tried to maintain his dignity. "We are here to discuss terms of coexistence." Coexistence. Chen's holographic sunglasses twinkled. "Honey, we're here to discuss collaboration. Your young people already get it. Check out these metrics." The chamber's displays showed footage from across the empire. Draconid ships now moved with unprecedented grace, their traditional formations enhanced by human-inspired innovations. Military academies had incorporated dance studios. For tactical training, they insisted. Even the Imperial Palace Guard had added chromatic elements to their ancient ceremonies, making them both more impressive and more effective. "Your culture hasn't been corrupted," Chen said gently. "It's evolved. And look what happens when we combine our styles." Above the chamber, the party rockin' and a Draconid battlecruiser performed a synchronized maneuver that merged traditional Imperial combat patterns with human flair. The resulting display was both tactically brilliant and visually stunning. "Our analysts report a 400% increase in combat effectiveness," reported Strategic Master Ixel, trying to hide his excitement. "And recruitment for the Imperial fleet has never been higher." Apparently, the youth find the new aesthetic totally epic. "It's not just military applications," added High Curator Zix, who now wore ceremonial robes with subtle dynamic elements. "Cultural engagement is at unprecedented levels. The young ones are actually studying ancient texts. They just do it with better presentation and background music." Kelzar watched as another holographic display showed a Draconid colony world where traditional architecture had been enhanced with quantum chromatic displays. The ancient buildings looked more impressive than ever, their history literally illuminated through human-inspired technology. "Face it," Chen said, "we're better together. Your traditions and our innovation. That's not just a combination. That's a revolution." Speaking of which, she pressed a button on her command chair, which to date hovered on a cushion of quantum particles arranged in a traditional Draconid pattern. The space around the council chamber lit up with a display of possibilities. Human and Draconid ships moving in formations that honored both cultures while creating something entirely new. Cities where ancient architecture merged seamlessly with dynamic elements. Young Draconids performing traditional ceremonies enhanced by technology that made them more engaging than ever. "This isn't the end of your empire," Chen explained. "It's an upgrade." Plus, She added with a wink, "Think how amazing your conquest fleets will look with proper lighting and choreography." "We do not need to make everything into a performance," Kelzar protested weakly, even as he noticed his tail moving slightly to the beat of the background music. "Don't we, though?" Chen gestured at the displays. "Look at your history, every ceremony, every tradition, every battle formation. They were all performances in their own way. We just added better production value." The chamber's eye, which had recently developed what it called taste, chose that moment to adjust the lighting for dramatic effect. The result was irritatingly perfect. "The council calls for a vote," announced the Lord High Speaker, his ceremonial staff now topped with a quantum chromatic crystal, "on the matter of formal alliance with Earth and the adoption of their aesthetic innovations." One by one, the council members voted, the younger ones enthusiastically, the older ones with varying degrees of resignation. The result was clear. The Draconid Empire was about to become fabulous. "Excellent." Chen beamed. "Now about your imperial anthem. Have you considered adding a bass drop?" As if on cue, the party rockin executed a perfect spiral above the chamber, its wake forming the merged symbols of Earth and the Empire in shimmering quantum light. The effect was both meaningful and extra, much like the alliance itself. "To the future," Kelzar said, finally accepting the inevitable. "May it be." "Totally epic," Chen suggested. "I was going to say prosperous, but..." Kelzar watched as his empire embraced a new era, one where tradition and innovation danced together in perfect harmony. "Yes, epic works too." Above them, human and Draconid ships moved in formations that defied both physics and conventional taste, their combined strengths creating something neither civilization could have achieved alone. It was ridiculous, excessive, and absolutely magnificent. The revolution would indeed be live-streamed, and it would have an excellent soundtrack.